I am deeply aware of this great inheritance and of the duties and heavy responsibilities.
The British monarchy faces a seismic shift as King Charles quietly passes the crown to his son, Prince William. But while a new king rises, one crown quietly disappears. Camilla's. What happens when a queen's title is tied solely to a king? And how does a legacy built over decades unravel overnight? This is a story of power, rivalry, and legacy, where centuries-old traditions collide with modern public sentiment. It's not just about a throne changing hands. It's about a queen losing hers, rewriting the future of the House of Windsor. The quiet transition unfolds. The British monarchy has entered uncharted territory. At 77 years old, King Charles made the unprecedented decision to begin transferring the crown to his son, Prince William, while still alive. This quietly seismic move sent shockwaves through Buckingham Palace and beyond. Without grand announcements or public ceremonies, the weight of the monarchy shifted, signaling a new era before the inevitable end of a reign. For Prince William and Catherine, the moment marked destiny fulfilled. But for Queen Camilla, it was a beginning of dramatic change, a quiet unraveling of her royal standing inside the palace walls. The night of the decision was charged with urgency. Those closest to William described a palpable sense of a new dawn that could no longer wait. William carried the enormous responsibility with a calm resolve. His wife, Catherine, embodying a steady authority admired by many. Their children stood nearby, living emblems of the future continuity of the House of Windsor. Meanwhile, Camilla was notably absent from early celebrations, retreating to her private rooms, a quiet symbol of the complex position she faced. Legally, the transfer was seamless. Sovereignty, according to British law, passes instantly upon abdication or death. The crown never lingers in limbo, but this was more than legal procedure. It was a performance of power and image. The world witnessed two living monarchs, side by side for a brief moment, one stepping down and the other rising. Yet between them stood a queen who suddenly had no throne. The monarchy had shifted, and Camilla's crown began to crack in public and private spheres alike. This moment is unprecedented, not just because of the timing, but because of what it means for the concept of royal authority. Camilla's reign as queen lasted just 2 years after her coronation in 2023, a short chapter marked by controversy and resilience. Now, with William taking the throne, all those fragile connections holding her status begin to snap under the pressure of tradition, protocol, and evolving royal dynamics. The repercussions extend beyond ceremony. They touch the very identity and future of Camilla's legacy. The quiet nature of this transition reflects the palace's understanding of optics and public sentiment. The monarchy has long struggled with maintaining relevance while respecting centuries of tradition. Handing the crown in life avoids the spectacle of a sudden death, but opens new challenges for all involved. Camilla, whose presence was carefully constructed over decades, now suddenly faces a future unmoored from the title she fought so hard to claim. Behind the scenes, this decision was both political and personal. Charles, weary and mindful of his advancing age, chose to accelerate an inevitable shift to preserve the monarchy's stability. However, this move also exposed persistent tensions within the royal family and among the public. For Camilla, it was more than a legal transformation. It was a human drama marked by years of public skepticism and palace politics converging in a single defining moment. The optics of a crown slipping away from its wearer, while another rises instantly sparked media frenzy and public debate. Headlines screamed of a queen stripped of her title, feeding into narratives of betrayal and rivalry. Yet, within the palace's corridors, the atmosphere was far more complex, a quiet recalibration rather than a dramatic fall. How Camilla's status would evolve and what it meant for the monarchy's future was a question hanging over every conversation. Ultimately, this transition set the stage for a seismic reshaping of royal roles. William and Catherine emerged not only as heirs, but as symbols of renewal. Camilla's role, tethered so intimately to Charles, suddenly seemed precarious. The palace had silently redrawn its hierarchy, and the consequences for Camilla were still unfolding, quietly but unmistakably changing the future of the House of Windsor. Her journey from queen now faced an uncertain path, one where allegiance, legacy, and public perception would collide with the immutable laws and unspoken rules of monarchy. Understanding Camilla's fall from queenly grace requires looking back at her complicated journey, marked by decades of public scorn and gradual reinvention. Camilla's controversial rise. For decades, Camilla was consistently the subject of public disdain and media mockery. Long branded the other woman during Prince Charles's marriage to Princess Diana, she bore the brunt of the blame for one of the most painful and public royal scandals of the 20th century. Public opinion polls in the late 1990s and early 2000s frequently showed her approval ratings hovering in the low 20s or even below 20%, a level unheard of for any royal figure. This disapproval was fueled by a deep association with the heartbreak surrounding Diana's tragic life and premature death in 1997. When Charles married Camilla in 2005, Buckingham Palace sought to navigate public sentiment carefully. To appease lingering national grief and maintain royal image, they promised Camilla would never be styled as queen. Instead, the palace declared she would hold the title Princess Consort once Charles ascended the throne. This was a delicate compromise, acknowledging her place beside Charles without provoking public backlash or overshadowing Diana's enduring legacy. It was a careful balancing act between tradition, public opinion, and royal protocol. Despite the tentative promise, Camilla spent the following years quietly reshaping her image. She took on numerous patronages related to literacy, domestic violence, and children's welfare, gradually softening the public's view of her. Characterized by many as pragmatic, warm, and even witty, Camilla's public presence became less controversial. The slow change in public perception was a testament to her perseverance and adaptability within the often unforgiving glare of royal scrutiny. The turning point arrived with the passing of Queen Elizabeth II in 2022. The late monarch herself reportedly gave her blessing for Camilla to be styled as Queen Consort, signaling a significant shift in royal endorsement and public messaging. The subsequent coronation in May 2023 further cemented this change when the palace dropped consort from Camilla's title entirely. From then on, she was simply Queen Camilla, a subtle yet powerful restoration of tradition. Still, Camilla's acceptance was far from universal. A 2024 YouGov poll revealed that nearly 40% of Britons preferred she retain the consort title, believing the title of Queen should remain inextricably linked to Diana's memory. Many viewed Camilla's crown as borrowed rather than earned, a symbol of unresolved public allegiance to the late princess. For critics, Camilla's coronation was a provocation. For supporters, it was vindication after years of enduring public whiplash. That crown, though now hers, carried a fragile legacy. It was tethered directly to Charles, based on his reign and his controversial journey. The question looming over the monarchy was whether Camilla could transcend the shadows of the past, or whether her title was simply a transient chapter in a royal saga marked by rivalry and reconciliation. The court of public opinion remained divided, even as palace officials worked to normalize her presence. As Camilla stood beside Charles, crowned in Westminster Abbey, she embodied resilience and a triumph of perseverance. Yet, beneath the surface, that triumph was fragile, dependent upon her husband's reign and his decisions. With the impending transfer of power to William, everything she had built faced an existential threat. The crown she wore was tied to a reign coming to an end, and soon to vanish completely. Her rise from reviled outsider to queen had shattered royal precedent. But her fall would test not just her personal legacy, but the very fabric of how tradition and public will intertwine within one of the world's oldest monarchies. That fragility of Camilla's status is rooted in an ancient principle. Her crown exists only so long as Charles reigns. The crown's fragile tether. Camilla's royal title is unique in its conditional existence. Unlike monarchs who inherit crowns through bloodlines, her status as queen depends solely on her husband's role as king. The moment Charles relinquishes the throne, whether by abdication or death, her title evaporates. She is queen by marriage, not by inheritance or law, and that tether forms the foundation of her precarious position within the monarchy. This legal reality means that while Charles's sovereignty continues, Camilla's role remains firmly attached to his reign. Once William becomes king, Charles's status recedes, and with it, Camilla's claim to the queen's title disappears instantly. The monarchy's rules leave no room for extension or compromise in this regard. Titles granted by marriage are not lifelong honors, but conditional and revocable. The concept of Queen Dowager exists as a traditional fallback for a king's widow or former consort. However, Camilla does not fit easily into this category. She is not the mother of the new monarch. Princess Diana holds that historical and emotional place, and she is not the matriarch of a royal bloodline in the same way. This complicates the use of any honorary titles after Charles's abdication and contributes to the palace's dilemma. Public perception further intensifies this challenge. Styling Camilla as Queen Dowager when Catherine will soon be crowned queen risks confusing the public, presenting the monarchy with two queens simultaneously. After decades of managing optics carefully to sustain royal favor, the palace is cautious to avoid mixed messages that could erode authority or fan old rivalries. The potential visual and symbolic clash is something the new leadership is determined to prevent. Reports suggest William himself may exercise decisive control over this matter. For years, he has advocated for a streamlined monarchy, prioritizing clarity in roles and minimizing competing titles. His vision places him and Catherine at the monarchy's center, leaving little room for Camilla's continued prominence. This aligns with a broader desire to modernize and simplify royal structures and public image. This shift signals a fundamental reset. The legal framework, combined with evolving perceptions, means Camilla's title is fragile by design. It is a possession handed temporarily, one that cannot survive the abdication of Charles. Her identity as queen is inextricably bound to his reign, and as that chapter closes, so too does her royal status. Beyond titles, this fragile tether affects Camilla's influence, patronages, and public role. As queen consort, she commanded a significant portfolio of causes and ceremonial duties. Without the crown, much of that responsibility and the visibility it brings will likely transfer to Catherine, reinforcing the latter's rise and Camilla's fading presence. Camilla's crown was neither hereditary nor permanent. It was borrowed, reliant entirely on her husband's position. This reality means her fall from queenly grace is built into the monarchy's very fabric, an inevitable consequence of succession, tradition, and the personal histories that shape the House of Windsor. Camilla's journey from queen to outsider is a deeply personal story shaped by ancient law and the politics of modern monarchy. Tradition versus modern optics. The British monarchy stands at a crossroads where centuries of tradition clash with the demands of modern public perception. For the royal family, how Camilla's role evolves after Charles steps down is as much about image as it is about law. Tradition dictates formal titles and ceremonial roles, but public sentiment resists confusion and fractures in the monarchy's hierarchy. The possibility of two queens bearing significant roles, Camilla as Queen Dowager and Catherine as Queen Consort, poses an optics problem. The palace is keen to avoid at all costs. Public opinion remains deeply divided over Camilla's place in the monarchy. While some accept her quietly as a stabilizing figure, many still see her through the prism of Diana's enduring legacy. The palace, aware of this divide, approaches the situation with delicate restraint, using subtle shifts rather than outright announcements to manage transitions. This balancing act reflects decades of lessons learned about how public perception can make or break royal legitimacy. Behind the scenes, the royal household is reportedly preparing for a streamlined monarchy. William envisions a smaller, more focused royal family with clearly defined roles, less public competition, and fewer working members. Camilla's shadow looms large over the past, but the future is firmly centered on William and Catherine's generation. In that future, Camilla's influence necessarily diminishes, not through scandal, but through strategic absence and a reallocation of duties. The traditional role of Queen Dowager, often granted to a monarch's widow, presents both an opportunity and a dilemma. Camilla is neither a widow nor the mother of the new king. Without these defining roles, the title risks confusing the public and complicating the palace's carefully managed narrative of renewal. Avoiding that confusion has become a priority, especially given the history of rivalry and painful comparisons to Diana that still haunt the family optics, and symbolism will shape Camilla's new position more than formal decrees. Even the spaces she occupies, such as Clarence House or royal apartments, are tied to her official status. Once her queenly title fades, those residences become subject to review, emphasizing the fragile link between place, role, and identity in royal protocol. The palace must carefully navigate these changes to preserve dignity while reinforcing the new order. The incoming reign will highlight Catherine's full emergence as queen. She will hold active ceremonial, diplomatic, and symbolic power. The queen consort, whose role needs clear definition, free from overlapping titles. Camilla's continued presence near that spotlight could dilute Catherine's authority and reopen public wounds. The palace's preference is for a singular queen who embodies the future. While Camilla's role recedes into the background, royal insiders suggest that William may wield considerable influence over these delicate decisions. His vision for a modern monarchy involves clarity, fewer titles, and unchallenged leadership by himself and Catherine. This approach aligns with broader efforts to present a united, refreshed monarchy attuned to contemporary expectations and ready to survive in a world of instant media and social scrutiny. All these factors point toward a diminished but respectful role for Camilla. The palace is unlikely to issue dramatic statements, removing her title. Instead, her stature will slowly and quietly fade, a soft exit from the stage of royal prominence. This gradual withdrawal is designed to avoid scandal, but carries emotional weight, signaling a transition not just of power, but of legacy and public favor. Navigating this territory requires balancing respect for history with the hard realities of succession and public will. The monarchy's survival depends as much on how transitions are perceived as on what they legally entail. For Camilla, tradition ensures her title was always tenuous. Modern optics ensure that now, as the crown shifts, so does her place within this ancient institution. The crown's shift from Charles to William solidifies a new era, elevating William and Catherine while signaling the diminishing influence of Camilla's chapter in the royal story, William and Catherine's Ascendance. Prince William's ascent to the throne marks a new chapter in royal history, one framed by renewal and an embrace of contemporary values. With his coronation comes Catherine's rise as Queen Catherine, a figure poised to become the face of a younger, more relatable monarchy. Their presence signals a deliberate generational shift, one that prioritizes a streamlined monarchy and seeks to distance itself from the controversies that shadowed the previous era. For Camilla, this transition is immediate and profound as her prominence steadily fades. William is often described as carrying his new responsibilities with quiet dignity and determination. There's no fanfare beyond what tradition demands. His focus remains on embodying stability and continuity for a nation watching closely. By his side, Catherine exudes calm authority, a reassuring presence who has already won widespread public approval through her patronages and poised public appearances. Together, they present a united front symbolizing hope and renewal. Their children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, represent continuity and the future of the House of Windsor as well. Their images and stories weave into the public narrative of a monarchy built for the 21st century. As the younger generation steps forward, the stage is set for Catherine to inherit many of the duties and causes once championed by Camilla, further signaling the transfer of influence between the two royal women. Camilla's role begins to visibly diminish as her patronages and public engagements are quietly handed over to Catherine causes once closely associated with Camilla: literacy, domestic violence awareness, children's welfare, are expected to migrate to the new queen's portfolio, reinforcing Catherine's position as the monarchy's leading female figure. This transfer is less about personal conflict and more about the strategic consolidation of roles aligned with the new reign. The palace's management of Camilla's gradual fade underscores the importance of optics in the royal transition. Public appearances, ceremonial roles, and even seating arrangements at official events will likely reflect her reduced status. Gone are the front-row seats and tiaras. In comes the quiet presence, respectful yet noticeably out of the spotlight. Her transition from the center stage to the wings is a visual reminder of a monarchy that adapts and moves forward. Housing arrangements and residences are also under review as William and Catherine establish their authority. Clarence House, associated with Camilla's role as queen consort, could be reconsidered, with possibilities of her relocating to more private estates. This move away from the bustle of London and the glare of the media reflects the palace's effort to manage her presence, while bolstering the visibility of the new king and queen influence within the family itself, factors strongly into this reordering. Catherine's rise is seen as decisive, with sources suggesting she will ensure her role is unchallenged by Camilla's prior prominence. The royal household is acutely aware that two competing female figures of equal public rank would create confusion and weaken authority. The monarchy's very survival depends on clear lines of power and a singular figurehead alongside the sovereign. This reshuffling resonates beyond titles and residences. It signals a fundamental change in how the monarchy presents itself to the public. Focused, modern, and unmistakably aligned behind William and Catherine. Their dynastic pairing is framed as fresh, more accessible, and better suited to navigate the complex media world and evolving national identity. In that framework, Camilla's chapter begins its quiet closure. As William and Catherine claim their place at the top of a reimagined monarchy, Camilla's influence and presence recede, making way for a new era with new faces and new narratives. It is the natural order of succession, but one laced with personal, historical, and public complexities that continue to echo. The soft removal strategy. As the crown passes from Charles to William, Camilla faces a quiet but deliberate fading from royal prominence, a process best described as the art of soft removal. Unlike abrupt or public stripping of titles, her diminishing status will unfold through silence, absence, and subtle shifts in palace protocol. There will be no royal decrees or dramatic announcements. Instead, her name will slowly vanish from official speeches, programs, and public events. This strategy prevents scandal, yet speaks volumes, portraying a graceful but unmistakable sidelining. Throughout royal history, similar approaches have been employed to manage delicate transitions. When King Edward VIII abdicated in 1936 to marry Wallis Simpson, she was denied the title Her Royal Highness and became Duchess of Windsor, a calculated downgrade signaling limited acceptance. Decades later, after Diana and Charles's divorce, Diana lost the style of HRH, but retained the title Princess of Wales in the public eye. These precedents illustrate how the monarchy prefers soft exits cloaked in nuance rather than theatrical dismissals. For Camilla, who has endured decades of public skepticism and tabloid hostility to finally claim her place beside Charles, this subtle removal carries emotional weight. She fought to be queen and now will be quietly reshaped into a more peripheral figure within the royal family. Privately, she may resist fading into the background, choosing appearances strategically to assert her relevance without overt confrontation. Such quiet agency could complicate the palace's attempts to streamline the monarchy and reallocate the spotlight to the new king and queen. The reallocation of Camilla's extensive charitable patronages underscores this shift. Causes she championed for years, supporting literacy, domestic violence awareness, and children's welfare, are expected to be gradually transferred to Catherine. This handover symbolizes more than a switching of duties. It highlights the passing of influence and public identity from one generation to the next. With her patronage portfolio shrinking, Camilla's public visibility will correspondingly diminish. Housing arrangements tied to her royal status are also set for reconsideration. Clarence House, linked to her role as queen consort, may no longer be hers once she loses that title. The possibility of relocation to private estates like Highgrove, away from London's public eye, aligns with the planned reduction of her public role. These moves reinforce the palace's desire to present a monarchy streamlined around William and Catherine, minimizing competing centers of royal attention. Closely connected to these plans is Catherine's increasing influence over the royal family's image and internal dynamics. Sources suggest Queen Catherine will actively ensure that Camilla's presence does not overshadow or conflict with her own rising role. The palace understands that having two female royals bearing queenly titles risks confusing the public and weakening authority. This influence shapes how Camilla's transition will be managed behind closed doors, as much as on public stages. Public perception remains a critical factor throughout this process. The monarchy lives and dies by optics, and any perception of discord or division threatens its stability. By managing Camilla's retreat discreetly, the palace hopes to avoid alienating her supporters while affirming William and Catherine's leadership. This balancing act is essential to maintaining institutional legitimacy during a time of significant change. Social media and tabloid narratives, however, complicate these efforts. Headlines proclaiming Queen Camilla stripped of her title ignite strong reactions, framing the subtle removal as dramatic and punitive. Public commentary often polarizes around historic loyalties and grievances, particularly regarding comparisons to Diana. The palace's silent strategy must constantly navigate these competing narratives to preserve the monarchy's cohesion. Camilla's gradual withdrawal from the spotlight is not just a matter of ceremonial detail. It represents a profound redefinition of her legacy. Her years beside Charles and contributions to royal causes will be overshadowed by the necessity of making way for the reigning queen and king. This quiet exit marks the closing of a chapter shaped by controversy, perseverance, and changing fortunes within the British monarchy. As public and media scrutiny intensifies, the reaction to Camilla's changing role reveals deeper royal tensions and emotional undercurrents that continue to ripple across Britain and beyond. Public reaction and royal drama. Public reaction to Charles's passing the crown to William was swift and electrifying. Tabloids erupted with sensational headlines proclaiming Queen Camilla stripped of her title and Kate takes the crown, framing the transition as high drama rather than ceremony. It felt less like a constitutional milestone and more like a Shakespearean spectacle unfolding in real time. Social media amplified the frenzy. Hashtags like #QueenCatherine and #Camilla outsurged, revealing deep divides in public sentiment. Many celebrated Catherine's rise as a restoration of dignity, often invoking Diana's legacy through emotional edits and viral comparisons. TikTok became a stage for poetic narratives that positioned Catherine as the rightful heir to Diana's memory. Yet Camilla's supporters pushed back. Among older generations and those who value her decades of steadiness, her quiet removal felt unfair. For them, she is a loyal figure who endured public vitriol and ultimately helped stabilize Charles and the monarchy. Their defense complicates the narrative of Camilla as simply a fallen antagonist. Commentators seized on the moment, framing it as a dramatic rivalry between Queen's analysts debated whether William's actions honor Diana or erase Camilla, while documentaries and opinion pieces raced to define the transition before it had fully occurred. This heightened media attention intensified the emotional stakes. Buckingham Palace decided to keep a strategic silence. The carefully managed photographs of William and Catherine, smiling, composed, and united, were the signal of continuity without any controversy. The silence became a message itself. The new generation is the future, and Camilla's period is gradually, quietly, coming to an end. On the other hand, Camilla's every public engagement is analyzed. Her staying away is interpreted as pulling back. Her coming is read as a subtle form of resistance. After experiencing and suffering from the hostility of the public for many years, she is fully aware of the power of just being there. This very silent but strong approach could lead to the building of internal tensions, not only with William and Catherine, but also with Charles, who continues to be supportive of his wife. Such differences in approach could mean risks not only politically, but also in terms of public relations. The supporters who are sympathetic to Camilla may portray William's rule as tyrannical, whereas the critics might ask whether pushing her back is in line with justice or just a matter of seizing the moment. But still, the shadow of Diana's legacy casts a very long shadow over all these events. Camilla is very much the subject of that memory in every situation, and William has to be very careful not to let it appear that he is driven by feelings rather than by the future. Yet leniency towards Camilla risks diluting Catherine's authority and reign. This razor-thin tightrope walk will shape the monarchy's reputation and cohesion for years to come. The future of the monarchy. The British monarchy stands on the edge of significant transformation as William and Catherine prepare to take the throne, signaling renewal while carrying the burdens of unresolved history. The end of Charles's reign and Camilla's quiet step back represent more than a shift in titles. They mark a strategic reshaping of the monarchy's image for a modern audience. William envisions a slimmed-down royal household with fewer working members and clearer roles, reducing confusion and streamlining public duties. In this model, Catherine's role as queen consort places her at the institution's forefront, embodying the diplomatic and symbolic responsibilities vital to its stability. Camilla, once central, becomes part of a receding past, reflecting a major generational pivot. The changeover is risky. Camilla's gradual withdrawal might wrangle familial disputes, especially in view of her long stay under the public eye and constant scrutiny. The possible division between the king and the next monarch, where he is the one shielding his wife, cannot be overlooked and might influence the perception of the monarchy's unity. The reactions from the public are diverse. A lot of people are glad to see William and Kate stepping up, whereas others consider the downsizing of Camilla's part as unkind or even somewhat of a historical revision, with the late princess impacting the views of all involved. William has to manage the fine line between paying tribute to his mother and being the head of an institution that has been modernized. The palace uses very discreet changes in tone, such as way of addressing, diminishing visibility, and redistribution of roles to communicate Camilla's new position. The bulk of her charitable activity will be assigned to Catherine, thus further solidifying the new queen's importance. Even the relocation of the residences, for instance, Clarence House, is indicative of this shift. The British monarchy stands transformed, with William and Catherine rising at its helm as Camilla's reign quietly fades. This chapter, marked by power shifts, legacy battles, and careful optics, reminds us that royal titles are as fragile as they are symbolic. If you found this story revealing, be sure to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the world's most captivating histories and current affairs.